お前はもう死んでいる。何？
What is going on, my fellow nerds? OperatorOtter here, and today what I'd like to discuss is what I believe will be the strongest Necromancer build going into the Gauntlet for Season 3. This build is one I call the Bombardier Necro. The base concept of this build utilizes Black River and the Sacrilegious ring in tandem with Bone Spear's ludicrously high base lucky hit chance to create these super powered corpse explosions that deal AoE the size of half the screen. With the changes made in Season 3, we can get these corpse explosions to hit really hard while also losing very little Bone Spear DPS output. And when I say these corpse explosions hit hard, I mean
okay.
The cost benefit of only losing about 10% Bone Spear DPS output but adding a corpse explosion half the size of the screen that deals 6 to 10 million damage means not only is our DPS potential higher than last season, but the sheer AoE we can output is completely unmatched. So, let's talk about it. As with Black River Miasma video I posted before Abattoir of Zir, I discussed in detail the 4 factors behind efficient Bone Spear DPS from the build's point of view. I'd like to take a quick moment to discuss the philosophy behind this build and why it is as efficient as it is at not only density destruction utilizing Corpse Explosion, but substantial single target DPS utilizing Bone Spear. Let's start by discussing the 4 factors of our single target profile utilizing Bone Spear. These being Bone Storm uptime, Essence Management, Flesh Eater uptime, and Grasping Veins uptime. Bone Storm gives damage reduction and further defense through the synergy with Aspect of Shielding Storm, which is vital to a Necromancer's ability to stay alive. It also gives 20% critical hit chance to a build that scales entirely off crit, so that's kind of important. Therefore, keeping it as active as long as possible drastically increases defense and DPS potential. To solve this, we run Lidless Wall. The way Lidless Wall works is that you don't need the primary Bone Storm around you to be active in order to proc more Bone Storms. As long as there is a lidless procced Bone Storm active, even if it's off somewhere in Uganda, you can still proc another Bone Storm to theoretically keep it up permanently as long as you are able to hit something else within 10 seconds. If that doesn't work, we are also running Decrepify to lower the cooldown of our skills, and with the absurd lucky hit chance of Bone Spear, this is easy to bring off cooldown, so that's solved. Essence Management is important for the fact that Bone Spear's damage scales directly with the Ossify Key passive. With the new Ring of Starless Skies, resource support from the Construct, Essence cost reduction in gear, Grim Harvest passive, which synergizes directly with Black River and Sacrilegious ring to detonate 5 corpses at a time per second to give 30 Essence back per second, and resource on lucky hit in our shield. Essence Management is quite literally a non-issue, so that's solved. Flesh Eater is a flat 40% multiplier to all of our damage. This includes Bone Spear and Corpse Explosion. The thing about Flesh Eater is that it cannot stack while it is active, so you can only start stacking when Flesh Eater becomes inactive. With a standard Bone Spear build, you can only stack 1 Corpse Explosion per second utilizing the Ring of the Sacrilegious, which means it takes 5 seconds to come back online, which in turn means it can only be active for 6 out of 11 seconds, or a 55% uptime, which is not good. With Black River, you can detonate 5 corpses per second, which means as soon as Flesh Eater falls off, it immediately comes back online, which is an incredibly powerful increase to our DPS potential. So that's solved. Lastly, there's Grasping Veins uptime. Aspect of Grasping Veins, the amulet, gives us 30% critical hit chance and a whopping 60% multiplier to our critical strike damage. It is absolutely vital to keep this active 100% of the time to push us past the 90% critical strike chance breakpoint and have massive critical strike damage. A max rolled Ring of the Sacrilegious will automatically cast Corpse Tendrils for us every 8 seconds, which gives us a 75% uptime on Grasping Veins passively. But even better, with all the points into skills this build has, we can achieve 19 points into Corpse Tendrils with only 1 point allocated into it within our skill tree, which brings the cooldown to 5.92 seconds. Therefore, we could theoretically have 100% Grasping Veins uptime. So, that's solved. This build replaces a ring with the Aspect of Serration used in Season 2 with Ring of Starless Skies, which conveniently enough gives the same damage multiplier to Bone Spear as Aspect of Serration, but also affects Corpse Explosion, so we don't really lose any DPS there. And therefore, even though this build leans into empowering our Corpse Explosions, the only loss of a multiplier we have for our Bone Spear as compared to last season is a glyph that gives a 10% multiplier, and that's it. But, with Corpse Explosions dealing as much damage as they do now, it not only makes up for that 10% loss, it actually surpasses it, meaning that we actually do more single target damage than last season pre-Tears of Blood glyph. Now let's talk about Corpse Explosion and how we are going to lean into this optimally. The first thing I'd like to do is talk about some math regarding lucky hit chance in tandem with Hued Flesh and why it is vital to understanding why this build works as well as it does. With Black River, the proc chance of our Hued Flesh increases from 12% to 24% against regular mobs and 24% to 48% against bosses. For this discussion, we are going to let the boss percent chance exit the conversation because if you understand the mob chance, then the boss chance becomes overkill and you can easily understand the concept. With lucky hit chance in our gloves in both rings, the lucky hit chance of Bone Spear now becomes 69.5%. The way lucky hit chance works is basically the chance of a chance to happen, and in this case it means Bone Spear has a 69.5% chance to be coded as a lucky hit. On that lucky hit, there's then another 24% chance that it will spawn a corpse. This means if we take 69.5% and multiply it by 24%, then we get 16.68% chance to spawn a corpse. What this in turn means is that if we on average are able to hit about 10 enemies, then we can spawn about 1 to 2 corpses per Bone Spear cast. And we can cast Bone Spear about twice per second, meaning we can spawn give or take 2 to 4 corpses per second, depending on RNG. Problem is, we need 5 corpses to fully utilize Black River, and 2 to 4 corpses ain't cutting it. So how do we get there? Well, there's a rather interesting part to Bone Spear's damage profile, and that is the shards. You see, not only does the main spear have a 69.5% chance, but so does each of the shards. And this means that Bone Spear at maximum value has 6 equal chances within one cast to spawn a corpse at a 16.68% chance rate. Now I want to make something clear. One of the rules of lucky hit chance is such. Each ability cast can only have a maximum of 1 lucky hit chance event proccing per cast per target. So let's say the main Bone Spear in each of the shards just so happens to proc a lucky hit chance event. You are not going to spawn 6 corpses under one target. What it means is that you have 6 individual chances of 16.68% to spawn 1 corpse, and if one of those instances does spawn a corpse, then the other future chances are nullified and turned offline. In a practical sense during the dungeon, you will most likely get the main spear and 2 shards to hit each target because of how spread out the mobs are. Each mob is an individual event that is then characterized as a dependent event based on the lucky hit chance rule we just discussed. This creates a probability term in statistics known as hypergeometric distribution. So let's take our 10 enemies example again. If each enemy gets hit by 3 instances of Bone Spear, being the main spear and 2 shards, this means we have a 36.57% chance per enemy hit to spawn a corpse. Therefore, with 10 enemies hit, we can spawn 3 to 5 corpses per cast, and with 2 cast per second, this means we can spawn 6 to 10 corpses per second, which satisfies the 5 needed for Black River to wreak havoc with these nuclear corpse explosions. This is also not accounting for any additional corpses spawned by your Bone Storms dealing damage twice a second with its 55.6% lucky hit chance value, nor is it accounting for any of the corpses formed by mobs dying to your optimally empowered Bone Spears or nuclear corpse explosions. Corpses. Corpses everywhere. And this is why this build is able to function within practice at maximum value nearly 100% of the time. Okay, nerd theory and mechanics out of the way, let's actually talk about the build. As we move forward with the build, I want to disclose that in the planner link provided below, there are 4 separate tabs in the bottom left. There's the Endgame variant, followed by 3 staircase variants that you can utilize as you're putting this build together that include Paragon leveling boards with step-by-step instructions per level if you're not level 100 yet. I will go into more detail about that after the initial Endgame setup. For the Endgame build, we will run Harlequin Quest for the helm. For chest armor, we will run max life, total armor, intelligence, and barrier generation with aspect of shielding storm. For gloves, we will run 4 ranks to Bone Spear, critical strike chance, attack speed, and lucky hit chance with the splintering aspect. For pants, we will run Tybalt's Will. For boots, we will run movement speed after killing an elite, intelligence and essence cost reduction with the aspect of slaughter. For main hand, we will run Black River. For the amulet, we will run 3 ranks to Avulsion, 3 ranks to corpse skills, movement speed, and essence cost reduction with aspect of grasping veins. For ring 1, we will run Ring of the Sacrilegious. For ring 2, we will run Ring of Starless Skies. And for offhand, we will run Lidless Wall. For our skill bar, we will run Bone Spear, Decrepify, Bone Storm, Blood Mist, Corpse Explosion, and Corpse Tendrils. For sacrifices, we will sacrifice Skeletal Warriors Defender, Skeletal Mages Cold, and Golem Iron. Skill tree can be found in the D4 planner below. And now let's talk Paragon. For our first board, we're going to be running Sacrificial, which gives us a 10% damage multiplier and gives us bonus to armor, so that's cool. Going into our second board, we're going to run Sent to Death with Corporeal, which gives us another 10% damage multiplier, but also gives us bonuses to damage to injured enemies, armor, dexterity, and willpower, which will be used for turning on later rare nodes. For our third board, we're going to be running Bone Graft with Essence. Essence is a crit glyph with a crit scaling build. For our fourth board, we're going to be running Flesh Eater with Exhumation. Exhumation is going to be fully pumped out here, and the reason being is that this 208% additive corpse skill damage kind of turns out to be about 16% multiplicative damage to our corpse skills, Consuming a corpse fortifies us and it gives us damage reduction. Now this damage reduction doesn't stack, so it's going to be 10% from the being fortified and 4% from the damage reduction. So this gives us 16% multiplicative corpse skill damage and 14% damage reduction. So that's pretty sick. And then moving into the 5th board, we're just going to be rushing right up to the glyph to run control, because control is giving you these really fat multipliers to the actual dungeon itself. It doesn't modify the boss, but the dungeon accounts for about 90% of the run, so I'd rather utilize it there. For our seasonal construct in slot 1, we'll be running Tempest Governing Stone with Evernight resource support and breaking support. For slot 2, we'll run Flash of Adrenaline with Genesis duration support and tactical support. This is the endgame build, and I do want to address a rather concerning part to it that many may fear. The biggest concern I believe people may have is that this build utilizes Ring of Starless Skies, which can be a challenging item to obtain. I don't want you to think that this build's DPS, especially versus single target, is in the gutter without Ring of Starless Skies. So, here's a T100 boss kill replacing Ring of Starless Skies with a jank rolled ring using Aspect of Serration instead. As you can see, the damage is still incredible. It's not as great as Ring of Starless Skies. Ring of Starless Skies is an Uber, but it is still absolutely viable and should not be dismissed on the premise of not having a singular item. In the bottom left of the planner, you will see a drop-down tab, and from here we can click each individual tab in descending order of your gearing process. Let's start with Bombardier Necro Step 1. In this setup, we are assuming you do not have any other uniques other than Howl from Below. For this build, we will swap the following from the endgame build. For Helm, we will run Total Armor, Maximum Essence, Barrier Generation, and Cooldown Reduction with Aspect of Disobedience. Gloves will be Howl from Below. For Pants, we will run Ranks to Corpse Explosion, Max Life, Total Armor, Intelligence with Juggernaut's Aspect. For Main Hand, we'll run a Wand with Intelligence, All Stat, Critical Strike Damage, and Critical Strike Damage with Bone Skills with Aspect of Serration. For both rings, we want Critical Strike Chance, Maximum Essence, Resource Generation, and Barrier Generation. Ring 1 will run Accelerating Aspect, and Ring 2 will run Sacrificial Aspect. For Offhand, we'll be running Critical Strike Chance, Essence Cost Reduction, Resource Generation, and Cooldown Reduction with Splintering Aspect. Because we don't have Essence Cost Reduction rolls or Black River plus the Sacrilegious Ring combo, we are going to swap Decrepify for Iron Maiden and replace Blood Mist with a Generator. This way we still have a good way of generating Essence for our Bone Spears. For Skill Tree, refer to the planner linked below. Sacrifices remain the same. And for Paragon, we're going to do things a little bit different, and I hope this helps you out. So when it comes to leveling Paragon boards, this is what I see most common with most content creators, is that they just give you the board and they go, good luck. The problem is you don't necessarily know as you're leveling through this, like whether or not you should go for the glyph or go for Bone Graft first, or go for Scent of Death and then go for the glyph first, or go for this first. You don't necessarily know, and so you kind of have to just derive from it. They don't really tell you how to do it. So what I did here is that I went all the way up, starting at level 50, and it shows you this is what your level 50 board goes. And then when you reach level 51.5, that's your next one. And then when you reach level 55, that's your next one. And when you reach level 57, that's your next one. And it just goes step by step by step all the way to the point where you reach this board. Now, one of the more important things that I want to talk about is the swap glyph point. So when you get to this point after you max Essence, which is the first glyph you should be maxing, by the way, and you're doing Nightmare Dungeons, you need to max Essence first. You'll see Exhumation, that'll be the second one. When we do this swap, what we're going to do is we're going to take Control, we're going to put it into board 3, we're going to take Exhumation, we're going to put it into board 4, and then we're going to put Sacrificial into board 1. So watch here as S-Ments, we're going to do this swap glyph, boom. And that's how it switches. That's the most important change to the whole thing, but this takes you step by step all the way through it. Now, as you're going through this, you might be going through multiple steps. Maybe you hit step 2 before you hit level 100. It's just going to tell you to refer to step 1. So just go back if you need to do that to refer to it. And then obviously you have the Bombardier End Guide. So when you reach level 100, this is the board you should be going for. For our construct, refers to D4 planner or just C here on the screen. Now let's move to step 2. This is assuming you have formed some of the minor bosses and have attained Sacrilegious Ring and Lidless Wall. Gear swaps from the step 1 are as follows. Main Hand is still Wand, but now has Splintering Aspect. Ring 2 with Sacrificial Aspect is replaced by the Sacrilegious Ring. And Offhand is replaced by Lidless Wall. We now have Permanent Bone Storms and Passive Corpse Explosions and Tendrils cast. This will be a nice step in our power creep, but we still don't have enough Essence Cost Reduction or multiple Corpse Consumptions for Grim Harvest, so we will remain with the Generator and Iron Maiden. The skill tree remains the same, the sacrifices remain the same, Paragon remains the same, all compared to step 1. The construct will then swap the slot 2 Governing Stone with Flash of Adrenaline. Moving on to step 3, this is when we start farming Duriel and get the standard uniques from him being our Black River and Tybalt's Will. Gear swaps from step 2 are as follows. Howl from Below is replaced with Legendary Gloves, running critical strike chance, ranks to Bone Spear, attack speed, and lucky hit chance with Splintering aspect. Pants are replaced with Tybalt's Will. Main hand is replaced with Black River. Now that we have Black River and some essence cost reduction rolls, our essence regeneration is strong enough to not need a generator or an Iron Maiden. Because we have Tybalt's Will, not only have we increased our essence pool, but now Blood Mist gives us a 40% damage multiplier and gives us massive essence restoration on use. So we will replace our generator with Decrepify and Iron Maiden with Blood Mist. Our skill tree refers to the planner linked below. Sacrifices remain the same. Paragon remains the same unless you've reached level 100 at this point, with which you will then switch to the Bombardier End Game Paragon board tab. The construct remains the same. And then lastly is the Bombardier End Game Setup, which we have already discussed. This is when you have farmed Duriel enough to obtain Harlequin Quest and Ring of Starless Skies, and farm Malphus enough to have both Genesis and Evernight Unique Stones. At this point, the synergies between everything in the build would take another 10 minutes to explain, but trust me when I say it does tons of damage with great defensive potential. Now I want to talk about the bread and butter combo for the build and one you should master by muscle memory, as it is performed best for me. As you walk into a room with elites, perform the following rotation. Cast Decrepify on targets, cast 2 Bone Spears, cast Corpse Tendrils, cast Blood Mist, wait for the Tendrils pull, exit Blood Mist by recasting it, press Corpse Explosion, profit. One last note for bosses. The Ring of the Starless Skies does not require you to cast core skills anymore. Simply anything that costs resource will activate it. If you spam Decrepify 3 to 4 times before boss fight, then the Ring of Starless Skies will be fully active and give its full 40% damage multiplier and reduction to the cost of your spears to 11 essence per cast. That's all I have for you. If you enjoyed this guide, make sure to like the video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or praises, please let me know in the comments section below. I love being able to communicate with my wonderful audience. If you would like to stay up to date on new content coming out, hit the subscribe button to be notified of the new video drops and posts that I create, informing everyone of future content and progression of that content. I hope you all have a wonderful day and enjoy my build. Good luck and good hunting, friends. OperatorOtter, out.